But I guess like the first thing would just be like, A, how bad did it get? And also B, like what were you seeing? What did you observe that we're just not doing a very good job of reporting while there?
Israel is a fascinating place. When we were there 14 months ago, we all adored it and wanted to go back. Tel Aviv is a great city. And Tel Aviv, basically looks like there is not a war going on except for the fact that every place are the kidnap posters. I mean, they're every place.
Oh,
and there's always a lot of flags in Israel. When we were there, we noticed that, but they're really everywhere. And there's protests weekly against Bibi Netanyahu. There's a rally in this big square for the kidnap victims. But the city is sort of functioning. It's a very, very lively, very dynamic city. That said, when Israelis tell you that every single person in this country has been affected, they're actually not kidding. It's their uncle, it's their brother, it's their son. It's the fact that I served with this guy. I went around and I did things. I did a couple of, sometimes the stories that we're not seeing. I went to the kind of funeral wake of a Bedouin soldier. I went to the West Bank. I haven't really written about that yet. It's a place I would like to keep reporting from. It has been, you said you were kicked in the groin. I think Israel really has been really kicked in the heart. And it's shaken people that we know. Our dear friend Yael, who is so buoyant. She's like a German Shepherd puppy. She's delightful and smart and funny. Yeah. I've colored that to her face. She's been really shattered, and yet they're shattered but absolutely determined. They are not going to lose. Now, it's very controversial. I've spoken to people I hung out with a Palestinian activist, and I see the way he has to live in Hebron, and it's very complicated, and you're like, wow, things are kind of fucked up. And I spoke to a settler who's like, Israel has shown restraint. We could carpet bomb Gaza in an hour, and they're gone. It's gone and flattened. And
that I don't think is mentioned much, and should maybe.
He was fine talking about it because there are people that are like, can we just get rid of this problem? Of course, it won't get rid of the problem.
Yeah.
But it's a very tricky game. I don't know. I have no idea how it's going to get solved. I did spend a lot of time with hostage families, or not a lot, but a couple, 3 or 4 days. And that is something that is just unbelievably heartbreaking. You have your child, your young adult child, or your husband, and he's been gone now, 120 days. And the chances of them being alive are, not really great. So that's hard, and yet they're not going to let them be forgotten. So it's a sad place. It's an interesting place. It's a dynamic place. And I'm really grateful that I got a chance to go over.
What do you say to these families or these widowers or the people who have missing family? Like,
you just listen.
Yeah.
You just listen. I mean, you can say, you're sitting with a mother who's telling you, and I think we have a video of it, she's like, well, when she called me, she's at the Nova Music Festival, and that she calls me, and her friend is dead in the front seat now. They're being driven. She's shot. And I realize this is maybe the last time I'm going to talk to my daughter. And so I just decided to be a mother and comfort her. I mean, she's telling you this. You're like, you're just falling apart.
God.
You just listen and let them talk, and then hopefully you can, tell it in a way that is calm and, offer something to other people. That's all I do.
Did they seem eager to share their story, wanting it to get out there?
So I think it's yes, but I think that's also because they have to. It's like, don't forget my child. And I promised them that. Like, not promised like I'm such a big deal. Like, I told them I won't. I will do my part to get your child. They don't want their child to be forgotten. They don't want the stories to be forgotten.
Yeah.
That said, I'm sure that if they had the choice, they would just crawl up in a ball and cry.
Yeah.
They can't do that. And also being active and being part of this community now, there's this place called the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, and they all just kind of support each other. It sprang up. I wrote about it for Reason. Within 48 hours, like people at the top of their game, whether it was in media or PR or being a chef or being, a philanthropist. They all just came together. It's like, we're going to do this now, and we're going to keep the hostages' names in everybody's mouth, and we're going to make sure that they're not forgotten. And we're going to put pressure on the government.
It wasn't a government thing at all. It's just like,
not at all.
This is what Israelis did. They self-organized in a minute.
In 48 hours, it was up and running. And this place was crazy. As someone said to me, he's like, it's like Hotel California. Like, nobody wants to leave. Like, they all want to just completely be part of the solution. And I was really glad to be able to be there and be able to write about it. And it's hard because the other day, the Israeli government, this give you an example of Israelis. So there was a woman that's sort of one of the heads of it, and I hung out with her a lot. Found out the other day that 32 hostages they found out are dead, that they were hoping were alive, and probably have been dead since October 7th, which is just, it's so crushing. So I WhatsApped her. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, it is what it is. We just have to keep going for the other 70. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, that is this sort of built-in resilience to Israelis because they have to fight to keep themselves alive. No one is going to come. Well, America is doing things for them, but basically baked into the Israeli mindset is we got to save our own lives. So,
Well, and there's nothing like a common enemy to unite people, unless it's in this country. We can't even do that. But if anything, do you see them disagreeing about internally, or is that just not even apparent? Like whether it comes to Netanyahu or.
So, when we were there, Netanyahu had just gotten back in power or kept power with this weird coalition government, including people very much on the far right, that, the country went bananas over this. They marched like every night for a year. The military said, we're not going to fight for you. I mean, it was really very divisive. And then right after October 7th, all of that was put to the side and they're all together. However, the people I met, at least, which probably leaned for the most part more toward the peacenik kind of side, like Zionist, but peacenik, maybe not anti-settler, but not super pro-settler. They think he's a criminal and they want him gone. But when you're in an emergency, which they are, like, how do you throw him out right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think they're sort of just like trying to get through this period. But I mean, Matt would know a whole lot more about this than I do. Like, what the chances. No, it's true. I don't know. Like,
I think a thing, and you will, I imagine, back me up on this since you were there. But I think a mistake that Americans make and American politicians do is they try to BBize everything. Like, if we just get Bibi out of the way, then the war would be different, and they could have more restraint and do this and that. My impression is that Bibi just happens to be the person who's in charge, which means a lot. But if he leaves tomorrow and you appoint Nancy as an Israeli or whatever, or whoever to be there, Israel is going to act the same way. They are going to do whatever they feel is necessary, both to get all the hostages back and punish the people who took them. And that punishment, I mean, you've seen Munich. It's going to take a while. There's going to be squads. But also to create some kind of post-war settlement in which they can feel secure again. And I think Americans are discounting the importance of that fact. If you feel existentially threatened at all times, the settlement needs to be required that Israel either has a veto power over or has absolute confidence in how the people in Gaza use force and organize themselves militarily or have police force or anything like that. They can never feel that insecure ever again. That's going to lead them, Bibi or not, doesn't matter who, to do things that certainly the American left and the American sort of the peacenik faction are going to find appalling.
Yeah.
But that is where the Israelis are.
That's war. I mean,
it's war. It sucks. It's terrible.
I will also say that it was the fact that Hamas was able to get in so easily was a very, very big wake-up call for a lot of the country. And I had probably half a dozen people say to me, we got complacent. We were like, oh, Iron Dome, it's all great. No, it's fine. And one guy's like, basically they had 20-year-old girls like watching this particular area, and nobody, they like electronic guns, and like people just drove through. It's like, we let our guard down. We also had absolute faith in the IDF, and that faith has been shaken. So they're going to also, I think, be working to repair that and get more on their game there. And it was a wake-up call, and maybe that's necessary sometimes.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying it's worth the cost of what happened, but they recognize that.
And irony, too, is that peacenik faction that you're talking about probably is the glut of, hopefully there's some still alive remaining, of the hostages, because they mostly came from that music festival for the most part when it first came in.
And also the kibbutz.
kibbutz.
I mean, we visited when we went 14 months ago to a kibbutz, and they were. I mean, they were the communist type of kibbutzes, right? They were.
Oh my God!
And so they really hated Netanyahu. Remember that woman was like talking to us, and they were all about they wanted to organize semi-regular meetups with the people on the Gazan side of the border. They wanted to have the workers come in and to work with them. They hated all of this. Those people, how many people died in that one? 21, 23, in a very small kibbutz where like everything was basically an elementary school playground, so like it was the most like left wing pro two-state solution, pro let's get a Gazan to come in and work with us type of people, and they were slaughtered indiscriminately by the people that they were trying to help.
Oh my!
I'll tell you two stories. I went to one kibbutzim where there was wholesale slaughter. It was a different one. And one of the heads of the kibbutz there was, he was killed, and so was his son, and so was his mother. But there was another guy that lived like right by the border fence, like really right where they had drove through. And one of the things he did is he made kites. And what he used to do, because it's like you can see where Gaza was, he used to make these kites, and he would fly them over to Gaza and say things like, we can all live together. We can all be peaceful. And we're on this, we're walking around. It's like, that's a great message. But the people that you were sending the message to, they were not receptive to that message. And
digging tunnels.
And then I went to they're digging tunnels. They're like, nice kite. We're busy over here. And then I hung out with a settler in Tekoa. And he, as we were driving through his area, he's like, oh, so this new sort of security thing came in 2 days after October 7th. We have to put that here on. You see that lot over there, that parking lot? That used to be where the people from Gaza and Palestinians parked, the workers here. And the quote I think he said to me is like, they were like the Mexicans in America. They worked twice as hard for half the money. He's like, we're not having them back anymore. That lot is empty and probably will be forever. And
now you have a lot of, Israelis my age coming over to pick the crops.
They have to. They have to pick the crops because there's nobody to pick the crops. Also, to build the houses. To build the houses. Like, houses are half built on his settlement.
That is nuts.
So they're having to figure out, and he's like, how do we get people and get it's a big Israel really went, and now they're going to have to figure things out. So.
Oh my God. And that kind of, cheap labor is not coming from their neighbors anymore. Boy, that is just mind-blowing. Well, definitely you guys subscribe, get our newsletter and stuff like that, because it's eye-opening, if not feel good. But
I'm gonna write
were there any, aside from the overall strength and unity and all that, was there anything else positive you were able to glean from this?
I love Tel Aviv. We're gonna go back pretty soon. I loved it. The people, everybody makes, as I told Matt, everybody makes eye contact. So there's this constant like zap, zap, zap energy. Like you're constantly.
Oh, you wouldn't like that.
People. No. Well, I do like it. And the food is great, and the energy is great. And I went to this crazy weird dance thing that was great. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, and the people are positive, and they're gonna push. They're gonna fight. So. Yeah.
I'm told the dudes are super hot.
Unbelievable.
There it is.
It's
Yeah.
Let's not sleep on the IDF gals.
No, and the girls too. No, these people are just in general really good-looking people. Just they've got like a lot of times like light eyes and just beautiful. Just like a beautiful people in general.
I wonder if it just has to do with forced military service. Like you develop a routine. You're staying in shape at an early age. Probably not.
Sure.
Actually,
are you expressing a kind of regret right now?
Yes. If I had even an ounce of that discipline, I'd probably still have a roommate.
Routine. They wake up at the same time every day. They drink a gallon of water every day.
3 square meals. Oh. Again, it's just a theory I'm working on. Well, and then the other thing, too, just as heroic, you interviewed a media mogul by the name of Bill Maher recently. Very much enjoyed it. Matt is a regular on Real Time. I really loved your last appearance. And Boy, and like you could tell, it's great because it's obviously very well researched, but you can tell that these two have known each other for a while because there's a great back and forth there. There was a lot of stuff that I highlighted. I won't get into all of it, but oh boy, I had so many mixed feelings when you mentioned that he was somehow had a dropper of organic water that was recommended to him by Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
I didn't know what to think about that. I love Bill Maher, but that was sort of an ugh.
I'm at the Polo Lounge in Beverly Hills, which, if it's been a while since you've been there, God, just go back. LA is the weirdest place in the world. It's fantastic. And he had this what looked like a little vial, the capper little thing, and it was dark, and I'm just looking at it, and at some point he just takes it and goes bloop into his water, and it like becomes like the color of Coke, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, it's I'm not a chemist or anything, but Aaron Rodgers recommended it to me, and it's great, and it gives you a lot of energy. I'm like, whatever, dude. Like he's and he's got a lot of energy, so
yeah. I mean, he looks great.
Cares a lot about what he puts into his body, by which I mean all the marijuana at all hours, except for maybe just a little bit before the show. He usually doesn't. He doesn't work stoned, I don't think, but he does on the
podcast.
Club Random. That's the whole kind of point of it. No, he's an interesting guy. Like he told me before. I don't think I'm betraying any confidence, but like.
The Kanye thing was a great.
The Kanye thing was hilarious. But he's done traveling internationally. Like too stressed out to get on a plane.
Interesting.
The whole thing is like too much to worry about. And because he went for his documentary Religulous, he went to Israel, right? Because his mom was a Hungarian Jew, which he only found out like as a teenager. And I I lived in Hungary for 3 years, and I'm very interested in that story. And I was like, oh, so tell me more about that. And he just like doesn't care. It's really funny. Like he has things that he just shuts down mentally, like the whole notion of kids and marriage and stuff. He's just got.
Oh yeah.
He's made up his mind about all of these topics and has strong feelings about it. But it was fun. It was a fun thing, and I think it's love him or hate him, and a lot of people, he's a polarizing figure, but it's pretty amazing to do a TV show for 30 years, right? Or two TV shows for 30 years.
The vibe you get when you read it is he hadn't really sat back and thought about the fact that it's been 30 years. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you guys know what broadcasting is like. It's a lot of work, and to bring it and still be vital. Like he has, in some way, I think, kind of more relevance to the culture right now than he has at any time in his career, and that's saying something. Like he plays a role now that seems kind of more important as the rest of the media is leaving the field a little bit in terms of being willing to interview people who have the bad ideas and the bad views, and of like kind of saying the awkward truths out loud, especially to the Democratic side of the aisle, and fighting at least somewhat against the whole like deadly late night comedy problem of clapter, of just people like, my God, I watched Jimmy Fallon, I don't know why, just on accident about a week ago, and just his stand-up part of the show, and like, you might think that Maher's maybe not had a particularly like bad opener or closer or just whatever show. I've never watched anything on Maher as deadly unfunny and unspirited. Just like there's a dead zone behind Jimmy, and I have nothing against Jimmy Fallon. I hear he has a good thirst, but
he's a mean drunk too. I can say that firsthand accounts. Oh God, yeah. There's that. No offense to our Mick viewers. God bless you people. But there's that weird Irish drunk thing that happens after a while. I've seen him do it more than once.
That's too bad. Because he seems, he plays a nice guy on television. But like, I think
he is sober.
It's not funny, and it's all for clapter. And Colbert's the same way too. Not funny and for clapter. At least Jon Stewart, who came on last night.
Did you see
his
it?
first show was funny.
And like apparently,
it wasn't clapter.
I was looking at the clips. He did a really good job of really leaning into the both of these candidates are old as fuck thing, which
well, it seems too like you wanted Maher to kind of comment on some of these late night hosts, and he seemed really unwilling to criticize.
That is the one moment that I wish that we did it on video or audio, because he's like, he did that Maher laugh, and then he's like, I get in trouble when my agent doesn't like it when I say this, so let's just say that people are doing great work, and everyone has a different point of view.
Yes. It's the way you say it.
Oh, it
for
sounded
sure.
because it reads more earnest, I guess.
But he had a lot of nice things to say about what's his face, who does the Trump impersonation on SNL,
Yeah.
James Austin, whatever, who's fantastic.
He really
He does the
is.
best Bob Dylan anyone's ever even thought of. If you haven't seen that, he does Bob Dylan throughout the years. So
Oh my
I
God.
haven't seen that.
it's
And I haven't seen him do Trump either, but I looked him up when you told me, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Saturday Night Live
he gets
in a long time.
Mara's right about this. Like he gets the insanity, the like leaping from this to that in any given conversation, and like gets that perfectly.
Well, tomorrow's Valentine's Day, so I wanted to do an opener of various animals having sex.
Yes.
But after that, for Thursday, I will get a sizzle reel of his Dylan
Priorities.
impression, yes. I just have to think ahead, but that's my mental note to get his Dylan impression. But it was great, and also just again, like the thing that really has made. Has gotten a lot of press is, of course, the Kanye reveal that, I mean, if you haven't listened to it, it's a good listen, but sometimes everyone is too drunk or stoned on it. His podcast, he gets people talking about not so much as politics and more just they get stoned and talk about whatever. But he did a whole thing with Kanye and then just couldn't release it. And the reasons why he said it, I got. But it was basically almost like you don't want to put this kind of rabid anti-Semitism, you don't want to give it a pulpit. And he was trying to get him to dial it back, I guess.
Yeah, it was a bit of a peace offering of like, hey, let's like sit down and talk it through, but not just a peace offering, but hey, I want Kanye to also to understand how what he's saying is nonsensical and hurtful is a stupid word, but hurtful. And so he kept, they would talk about it and then cycle back around, and Kanye would just like drop some crazy anti-Semitic bombs afterwards. And his conclusion was like, if I release this is just adding kind of more filth into the air.
Yeah.
I'm like not going to do it.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
And also, maybe I think sometimes he leans a little too much on the getting fucked up part. But like, if you're at that state, you're not going to be defending your points as well as you should be when you're really stoned or really drunk. And all of a sudden you're just sitting in front of someone that's just doing all this bile. Like, if that were happening on his show, I think he might have had a little more wherewithal to say, this is wrong and here's why, than when you're stoned,
Yeah, I think it's more like you're just trying to use the relaxation to get into some place, but who knows? I don't do that.
But it's really great. Check out both of their fine works. And I'm gabbing too much. Do you have anything that you want to get to? Why you smirk?
Just really interesting at the beginning of your article, for Reason, everyone check it out. You mention a poll that was done about trustworthy, media figures?
Media figures, yeah.
And Maher came in, I guess, first place, if you will, at 40%. But very close behind are some of the more controversial figures.
Tucker Carlson.
Joe Rogan.
Charlie Kirk, I think even. Was it Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro?
Ben Shapiro was 33. I think Tucker was a little bit ahead at 35%, and then Ben Shapiro.
Tucker was up at 40, but it was a limited poll, but it included Jake Tapper, it included mainstream people, and there was both the sense of trustworthiness and then also that we think they're really untrustworthy. So there's kind of a gap you can look at, and Maher was at the top. It was a small list. It was like eight names, but. I think it says something. When you go on, you get feedback from people that you just never would have thought would watch him or would ever see you on television. Anyways, like people come out of the woodwork.
Oh yeah,
and that wouldn't happen if he didn't have some kind of level of trust. And it's not necessarily that you agree with him, but like you, in fact, in many cases, I think you can build extra trust by coming on more directly and strongly with your opinions, but also, being able and willing to talk to kind of everybody, and being able to criticize whatever your own team is, and people will respond to that. I mean, I think we've all seen this in the worlds that we've worked in, and the kinds of people who are actually trusted within Fox when you guys work there, and the ones who are just like rah team. The difference between those things and those brands. I don't think that Tucker is getting into a more trustworthy place as he goes on to his Putin apology.
Did either of you
tour.
watch that?
No.
Interview?
I'm amazed how little press it actually seemed to
just
get, considering
clips. I
the
mean, I'm not
situation.
going to watch Vladimir Putin go for 30 minutes about the history of like
No.
9th century Russia. I'm familiar with him enough already, but it's embarrassing where Tucker has gotten with this. He really sounds like someone who got a Eurail pass for the first time and is like, wow, these cities are clean. Wow, that's great.
Cleaner than any city in America, Matt.
It's.
Oh no! See, I haven't even looked into it enough to know that was like one of the quotes or something like. Oh God!
It is.
And the trains were on time too.
If you view Moscow from the Ritz-Carlton where Tucker stayed, it is. I'm sure that it's a very clean place. There might be some other vantage points within the city.
Oh boy. Yeah, but it was really great. Definitely check it out. I love the fact too, also, of course, that he mentioned that there were all these, without saying their names, A-list celebrities telling him all the time, why do you have this person on? Why do you have it? And he's like, fuck you in your ivory tower. And I mean, basically all you had already touched on. But yeah, it's great. And Nancy, I know you and Sarah. I feel like Sarah wanted to bring this up just because you were so dismissive of the beautiful lifestyle choice that is polyamory on a recent episode.
Well, so I will say that we had Dan Savage on yesterday, and that'll.
I haven't listened to that one yet.
Well, it's not out yet. It'll be out tomorrow. But he said he had a bone to pick with me about polyamory. I'm like, language. You can listen. You guys can just listen to that, and we'll get an earful about polyamory. I think the problem I have with polyamory is people just talking about the fact that they're polyamorous. Not that our crew gets that a lot, or at least ours, maybe yours does, but
I could feel you nodding right there.
Yeah, I remember being in Portland a number of years ago, like almost 20 years ago, and these, I was like 42 and these young, they're like, oh yeah, because we're like, the insinuation was they were so much more advanced because they were polyamorous. And I'm just like, that's right, dears, just whatever. call me in 5 years. So
Doesn't sound like you're an ally.
they can do whatever they want. I just don't, why do you need to come in with a big drum,
It's kind of a
banging
vegan CrossFit situation.
Right, or like when they first, and I'm really glad when people stop drinking, when they have a drinking problem, you love it, but for the first 8 months they're in AA, it's just like, okay, I know. I know. But you forgive it because then they get to the next part. I think the polyamorous people, as I said, it just all ends in grubbiness and tears.
They're basically horny dry drunks, is what you're saying.
I don't.
And my main thing is that's a whole lot of schedules to keep.
That's right.
And a whole lot of messages you got to text back. And that's too many for me.
Yeah, that's if the WhatsApp clusters there would be.
Apparently they do. They make this. I mean, how unsexy is that?
Yeah.
Have our little calendar. It's just like, anyway, whatever. It's their business.
Well, this one that I saw, it came out recently, but it made me think of that episode. I'm still not even clear as to what this is, but there's a new category, y'all, and it's solo poly, which sounds like a porn name.
Sounds like a cup. Isn't that a drinking cup? The solo poly.
Yeah, it's either a euphemism,
Or it's a child's toy, Polly Pocket. She's alone.
Yeah.
Solo poly?
One of the people they profiled, James Nicholson, this is in the Times, went through a breakup in October, and he realized that he was at a point in his life where he wanted to focus more on himself than on someone else, but without losing the perks of romantic intimacy. We can do all sorts of word salads for I want to fuck a lot. A 46-year-old Bronx resident decided to embark on a journey of solo polyamory.
Well, if it's a journey, it's okay.
Thank you. To Mr. Nicholson, that meant dating several people at once with no intention to ride the relationship escalator to...
That's just called being a dude.
That's exactly...
College usually
It's called
is
being a
more fun.
fuckboy, right?
I know, and when Dan Savage's case, I know he's got the agreement with his husband. That's called being gay. And by the way, that's one of the great aspects of being gay. All the sex.
You should hear. He goes into, if you guys listen to the episode, it's Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em, it drops tomorrow. He and his husband have an interesting relationship, let me tell you.
I assume
Pretty
there's
interesting.
always one that's more enthusiastic about the poly part than the other, I feel like. Solo polyamory, or having concurrent intimate relationships while maintaining independence, is the whole thing. For the solo poly, the end goal is not an exclusive partnership, marriage, shared finances, or cohabitation.
Didn't need a name for this.
It's fucking.
No, what is it with that? We gotta lay.
I think it's just that he's a 46-year-old man, right?
And he's very proud that he's fucking multiple people, and he really needs the New York Times to talk about it.
Yeah, so instead of, it's like the plot of the musical Company. Bobby, when are you going to get married? Bobby, when are you going to settle down? It's like, I'm solo poly.
I'm fucking.
Step back and be like, oh, this is a lifestyle choice, and I shouldn't be the one to criticize.
Something happened 10 or 15 years ago or something where everybody needed to have a team or a tendency. I saw this in politics. Rod Dreher, who's one of the now apostles of Viktor Orban in Hungary, but a conservative writer.
Like Tucker.
Like Tucker. He was the John the Baptist of Viktor Orban. But he used to write for the National Review, and I remember, and this is early after 9/11, so it's 20 years ago, he was talking about this new category that he called crunchy cons. Crunchy cons were like
cereal, right?
crunchy conservatives who were like into like wearing sandals and like being environmentally conscious and kind of back to the land.
I
And
do know a lot of Republican deadheads.
there can be Republican deadheads, but it's just then and now. I was like, why do you want to belong to a tribe? Why must you feel like you need to name the tribe? There's a guy who wrote a book called South Park Conservatives, in which I was described as a economist-style conservative liberal or liberal conservative. Like none of it made sense.
That sounds like them trying to describe
And stop the solo poly. You're just a 46-year-old dude who, thanks to technology, can now swipe right to get a fuck, which would be more work if you were actually 46 in the prehistoric times.
Absolutely.
And like you don't have to have a special sunflower like name for it, and it doesn't make you any more noble or less noble, except for the fact that you're blabbing about your dick to the New York Times, which just seems to me as like a middle-aged man, that's not what we're supposed to do. That's not what we were evolved into becoming. I don't think.
And well, you know what it is too. I think to your point, it's just because everyone is so isolated and online and in their homes and looking at their phones all the time that they are more lonely than ever. And the idea of being in some sort of group, as weirdly named and nonsensical as it is more appealing than ever as a result, even though that group is not somebody that are ever even meeting in person half the time.
The way that you started that little flurry off just made me think, what's the name of Bill's group?
Oh,
I have the courage to not be in one.
Solo celibacy. You would think celibacy would already be solo, but Bill's is even more independent.
To the next
It
level.
just sounds like I'm always masturbating. That's what it's. Oh, I'm so like I can't be in a public space. I don't like that one.
You got to mix in like late night drunk Jersey shopping.
It's a lifestyle choice. Yeah, by God, that's
having a roommate.
Yeah.
I wonder
for dates were it not all of these in my closet.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if like
vintage.
the tribe identifications has to do with feeling either insecure or slightly guilty about the choices you're making or the relationships you're in. So then by defining it, it's empowering or you can
legitimizing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why. But also, I want to know how this guy and this Times writer linked up. Like, how did that come to be? Met this guy at a bar. A friend complained about this guy who's sleeping around at age 46. I got to interview this person. I want to know how that happened.
I mean, it's a made-up trend. Famously,
it is.
it's like a friend of a friend, but I remember a long time ago they just needed a gig, and none of their pitches were going very well. And I've been guilty of this myself, and so they just made up a trend. He went up to his editor at the Times and was like, you know what the big thing now is? Stoop parties in Brooklyn. Everyone's on their stoop having parties. Completely made it up. Had a couple of his friends say, yeah, man, you know what I do on the weekends? Stoop party. And then you give that to the Sunday Styles and say, hot new trend. And then you have the added bonus of Brooklyn in the sentence. Money, money, money.
Well,
But yes, stoop parties. Never a thing. completely made up because he was just running out of ideas.
Even the non-fake stories, which were fake enough because it's just because you ran into someone, they all emanate from the same place, which is Park Slope, because that's where all the journalists live, especially if they're 46. Where did that story come from? It came from a bar in Park Slope, or even worse, it came from like a dog walk, dog park kind of thing.
Yes.
That's where the polyamorous story came from. Of course it did.
Oh yeah, that's completely. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
In LA, it would be where we used to live,
Yeah.
which is Silver Lake or Los Feliz.
Right.
Every single story about gentrification is like, oh my God, this tiny coffee shop went out of business. Gentrification.
Yeah. That's hilarious. All right, go ahead.